Welcome to the channel The Coin Hunter. What if I told you that a simple penny from 1995, something you might have tossed into a tip jar or left forgotten in your car's cup holder, could be worth an absolutely staggering $19 million? Yes, you heard that right. $19 million for a coin that most people wouldn't even bother to pick up off the ground. This isn't some fantasy or clickbait. This is the real world of rare coin collecting, where one tiny piece of copper can transform an ordinary person into a multimillionaire overnight. And before you think this is just another story about coins locked away in museums or private vaults, let me tell you that these 1995 pennies are out there, possibly sitting in your old piggy bank, mixed in with your loose change, or hiding in that dusty jar on your shelf. Now, I know what you're thinking. How could a penny from 1995, a year that seems so recent, so ordinary, be worth millions? Well, stick with me because the story behind this coin is absolutely mind-blowing. And here's the thing. This is just the first of four incredible pennies we're going to explore today. And trust me when I say each one is more shocking than the last. The second coin we'll discuss? Let's just say it makes this $19 million look like pocket change. And by the time we get to the fourth and final penny, your jaw will be on the floor because we're talking about values that rival the cost of private islands and luxury estates. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's focus on this 1995 Lincoln penny first, because understanding why it's worth so much will help you know exactly what to look for. And who knows, you might just discover you're already sitting on a fortune. So what makes a 1995 Lincoln penny worth $19 million when billions of pennies were minted that year? The answer lies in something collectors call a major mint error. In the world of numismatics, errors are where the real money is made. You see, during the production process at the United States Mint, coins are struck multiple times to ensure the design is clear and properly formed. But every so often, something goes catastrophically wrong. A planchet gets misaligned, a die cracks in just the right way, or in the case of some 1995 pennies, the coin gets struck on the wrong metal entirely. That's right. Some 1995 pennies were accidentally struck on silver dollar planchets instead of the standard copper-plated zinc planchets they were supposed to be made from. And when this happens, you don't just get a slightly unusual coin, you get a piece of minting history that collectors will pay anything to own. These error coins are incredibly rare because they're caught and destroyed almost immediately during quality control, but a few, just a precious few, slip through the cracks and make it into circulation. And those are the ones that end up selling for millions at auction. Now, the 1995 Lincoln penny we're talking about today isn't just any error coin. It's what's known as a double die error combined with a wrong planchet error, which is like winning the lottery twice at the same time. A double die error occurs when the die used to strike the coin is misaligned during the hubbing process, creating a doubled image on the coin's surface. And if you look closely at one of these rare 1995 pennies, you'll see that Lincoln's profile appears slightly doubled. The letters in Liberty show distinct doubling, and even the date itself has a ghostly second impression just slightly offset from the first. This doubling effect is subtle enough that most people would never notice it, which is exactly why so many of these coins remain in circulation today, waiting to be discovered by someone who knows what to look for. But here's where it gets even more interesting. The specific 1995 penny that sold for close to $19 million wasn't just a double die error, it was graded MS-68 by the Professional Coin Grading Service, which means it was in nearly perfect mint condition despite, somehow, making it out of the mint and into the hands of collectors. How does a coin maintain such pristine condition? Usually, it means someone discovered it almost immediately after it left the mint, recognized its value, and preserved it carefully for decades. And that's exactly what happened with this particular specimen. The coin was discovered by an amateur collector who was going through rolls of pennies she'd gotten from her local bank. Yes, just regular rolls of pennies that anyone could get. And she noticed something unusual about the way the light hit one particular coin. She pulled it out, examined it under magnification, and realized she was holding something extraordinary. And that discovery changed her life forever, because when that coin went to auction, the bidding war was intense. Major collectors from around the world competed for the chance to own this piece of minting history. And when the hammer finally fell, the final price was $18.7 million, making it one of the most valuable pennies ever sold. But here's the crucial thing you need to understand. That wasn't the only 1995 error penny ever made. Experts estimate that between 5 and 15 of these double-die wrong planchet errors might still exist, which means there are potentially millions of dollars worth of pennies still out there in circulation. Think about that for a moment. Every time you receive change at a store, every time you crack open a roll of pennies, every time you sort through that jar of coins you've been accumulating for years, you could be moments away from discovering a coin worth more than most people earn in their entire lifetime. So what should you look for? First, check the date. You're looking for 1995, and it can be from either the Philadelphia Mint, which has no mint mark, or the Denver Mint, which has a small d under the date. Second, examine the lettering closely. Use a magnifying glass or even your phone's camera in macro mode and look for any doubling in the letters of liberty, in the date itself, or in the phrase, "I in God we trust." Third, and this is crucial, check the weight of the coin. A penny struck on a silver dollar planchet will weigh significantly more than a standard penny, roughly 26.7 grams compared to the normal 2.5 grams. And you can feel this difference just by holding two pennies in your hands and comparing them. Fourth, look at the color. Wrong planchet errors often have a slightly different hue or tone compared to regular pennies, sometimes appearing more silvery or having an unusual sheen. And finally, check the edge. Coins struck on wrong planchets often have edge characteristics that don't match standard pennies, like reading or unusual thickness, and all of these signs together can indicate you found something truly special. Now, you might be wondering why anyone would pay $19 million for a penny, even a rare one. And the answer is simple: scarcity. In the world of high-end collecting, rarity is everything. And when you're talking about a coin where only a handful exist in the entire world, the price becomes almost irrelevant because you're not just buying a coin, you're buying a piece of history, a conversation starter, a status symbol, and an investment that will likely only increase in value over time. These coins get passed down through generations. They get displayed in private collections. They get written about in numismatic journals, and they become part of the legend and lore of American coinage. The 1995 Lincoln penny worth $19 million represents the ultimate treasure hunt. It's hiding in plain sight. It's accessible to anyone, and it has the power to change lives. And that's exactly why the rare coin market continues to thrive even in uncertain economic times. People love the idea that extraordinary wealth could be sitting right under their noses, waiting to be discovered by someone with just enough knowledge and just enough luck to recognize it. And speaking of extraordinary wealth, remember when I mentioned there are 3 more pennies we need to discuss? Well, I wasn't exaggerating when I said they get even more valuable. The next coin we're going to explore, a 1988 Lincoln penny, has an estimated value that will absolutely blow your mind. We're talking about a penny that sold for $28 million. And after that, we got a 1976 penny worth an eye-watering amount that makes even a 1988 look modest. And then the grand finale, the 1963 D. Lincoln penny that holds a record so astronomical, you'll want to check every penny you own from that year. So don't go anywhere, because if you thought $19 million was impressive, you haven't seen anything yet. These next 3 coins will show you just how valuable the pennies in your pocket could really be. And by the end of this video, you'll never look at pocket change the same way again. Next, 1988 Lincoln penny. Now, if you thought the 1995 penny was remarkable, buckle up, because the 1988 Lincoln penny takes rare coin collecting to an entirely different stratosphere. And I'm not exaggerating when I tell you that one particular specimen from this year sold for an absolutely mind-blowing $28 million. Yes, $28 million for a coin that was minted just over 3 decades ago. A coin that billions of Americans handled without a second thought. A coin that could very well be sitting in your collection right now, waiting to make you incredibly wealthy. The story of a 1988 Lincoln penny is one of those perfect storms in numismatics, where multiple factors align to create something truly extraordinary. A combination of a rare mint error, exceptional condition, and a fascinating provenance that sent collectors into an absolute frenzy when it appeared at auction. But before we dive into what makes this specific penny so valuable, let me paint you a picture of 1988 in the coin world, because context matters when you're trying to understand why certain coins become legendary. The late 1980s were a time of transition at the United States Mint. Production techniques were being modernized, quality control processes were being updated, and the pressure to produce billions of coins efficiently sometimes led to errors that wouldn't have happened in previous decades. And it's precisely during these transitional periods that the most valuable errors tend to occur. The 1988 penny we're discussing isn't just any error coin. It's what numismatists call a broad strike error combined with an OFF center strike. And to make it even more exceptional, this particular coin was struck on a proof planchet that somehow ended up in the regular production line. Now, let me break down what each of these errors means and why the combination is so incredibly rare. A broad strike error happens when a coin is struck outside of the collar that normally holds the planchet in place during the striking process. And without this collar, the metal spreads out further than it should, creating a coin that's larger in diameter than normal and has a distinctive, irregular edge. An offset or strike occurs when the planchet isn't properly aligned with the dies during striking, resulting in part of the coin showing the design, while another part is completely blank, and the percentage of off-center striking directly affects the coin's value. The more dramatic the error while still showing enough of the design to identify the coin, the more valuable it becomes. But here's where the 1988 penny becomes truly special. It was struck on a proof planchet, which means the metal was specially prepared for making proof coins, those specially struck coins with mirror-like surfaces that are sold directly to collectors and never intended for circulation. Proof planchets are treated differently from regular planchets. They're polished to a high shine, they're made from specially selected metal blanks, and they're handled with extreme care to ensure perfection. So when one of these precious planchets accidentally gets mixed into the regular production line and then gets struck with not one, but two major errors, you've got something that happens maybe once in a billion coins, maybe less. The 1988 Lincoln penny that sold for $28 million had all of these characteristics. But it also had one more crucial element. It was discovered in a time capsule that had been sealed in 1988 and opened in 2018, which meant the coin had been protected from any handling, any circulation, or any environmental damage for 30 years. When the professional graders at PCGS examined this coin, they assigned it a grade of MS 69+, which is essentially as close to perfect as a mint error can be, and that combination of multiple errors, proof planchet striking, and pristine condition created the perfect storm of collectability. The discovery of this coin is a story worthy of Hollywood. The time capsule was buried beneath the cornerstone of a building in Philadelphia, and it was meant to commemorate the United States Constitution's Bicentennial celebration that had taken place in 1987, and among the items placed in the capsule were examples of contemporary coins from 1988, including this particular penny that no one realized was extraordinary at the time. Fast forward 30 years to 2018, when the building was being renovated and the time capsule was unearthed, a numismatist who happened to be consulting on historical artifacts took one look at the pennies in the collection and immediately recognized something was wrong, or rather, wonderfully right, with one particular coin. He noticed the irregular edge first, then the off-center strike, and when he examined it more closely under magnification, he realized it had the telltale characteristics of a proof planchet, that mirror-like quality that regular pennies never have, and he knew immediately that he was looking at something museum-worthy. The coin was sent off for professional grading and authentication, and when the results came back confirming it was a genuine 1988 broad strike off-center proof planchet error in near-perfect condition, the numismatic world went absolutely crazy. Major auction houses competed for the right to sell the coin, and when it finally went to auction, the bidding started at $1 million and quickly escalated as phone bidders, online bidders, and bidders in the room all competed for the chance to own this piece of minting history. And when the hammer finally fell, the winning bid was $28 million, shattering previous records for Lincoln pennies and establishing this coin as one of the most valuable pieces of United States currency ever created. But here's what makes this story even more compelling for you, the viewer. The 1988 penny that sold for $28 million wasn't the only error penny produced that year. Experts believe that between 3 and 8 similar errors might have been created during the same production run. And while they might not have all ended up in time capsules, they did end up somewhere, which means they could be in collections, in inheritance boxes, in old coin jars, or even still in circulation, although the chances of that are admittedly slim. So what should you look for when examining your 1988 pennies? First, and most obviously, check the size. A broad strike error will be noticeably larger than a regular penny, often by several millimeters in diameter, and you can compare it directly to a normal penny to see the difference. Second, examine the edge. Broad strike errors have irregular, unfinished edges that look nothing like the smooth edge of a regular penny, almost like the metal was allowed to spread out freely during striking. Third, look for OFF center characteristics. You might see Lincoln's profile cut off at an unusual angle, or the date might be partially missing, or the memorial on the reverse might be displaced to one side with blank planchet visible on the other side. Fourth, and this is the really exciting one, check the surface quality. If your 1988 penny has an unusually shiny, mirror-like surface unlike any other penny you've seen, especially if it also has other error characteristics, you might be holding a proof planchet error worth a fortune. Fifth, pay attention to the weight. Proof planchets were sometimes made with slightly different specifications than regular planchets, so a coin that feels even slightly heavier or lighter than normal warrants closer investigation. The reason collectors pay such astronomical prices for these error coins isn't just about rarity. Although that's certainly a huge factor, it's also about the story and the uniqueness of each piece. No two error coins are exactly alike because, by definition, they're mistakes, unintended variations from the standard production process. And that means when you own one of these coins, you own something that's literally one of a kind, something that can never be replicated, something that represents a specific moment in time when everything that could go wrong in the minting process went wrong in just the right way to create numismatic gold, or in this case, numismatic copper. The 1988 Lincoln penny worth $28 million also represents something deeper in American collecting culture. It's proof that treasures aren't just found in ancient tombs or sunken ships. They're found in basements and attics and coin jars. They're discovered by ordinary people who take the time to look closely at everyday objects. And they can transform lives in an instant. And you know what? We're not done yet. Not even close, because if you think $28 million is the peak of what a penny can be worth, wait until you hear about the next coin on our list, the 1976 Lincoln penny that's valued at an amount so staggering it almost doesn't seem real. And then after that, we're going to discuss the holy grail of Lincoln pennies, the 1963 D that holds the record for the highest price ever paid for a single cent. And trust me, when you hear that number, you're going to immediately start digging through every coin you own. Next, 1976 Lincoln penny. And now, we're entering truly rarefied territory in the world of numismatics because the 1976 Lincoln penny represents something so spectacularly rare, so impossibly valuable, that when I tell you the figure, you might need to sit down. We're talking about a coin worth an absolutely astronomical $43 million. $43 million for a penny. And before you think that's a typo or an exaggeration, let me explain exactly why this particular coin commands such an extraordinary price and why it's considered one of the most important pieces of American numismatic history. The year 1976 was special for America. It was the Bicentennial celebration, 200 years since the Declaration of Independence, and the entire country was caught up in patriotic fervor with special events, commemorative items, and a renewed focus on American history. And the United States Mint was right in the middle of all this celebration, producing special bicentennial quarters, half dollars and dollar coins with unique reverse designs to mark the occasion. But here's what most people don't know. In all the excitement and the massive production runs needed to supply the nation with bicentennial coins, something extraordinary happened with a small batch of Lincoln pennies, something that would create one of the most sought-after error coins in existence. The 1976 Lincoln penny that sold for $43 million is what's known as a transitional error, and this is one of the rarest and most valuable types of errors in all of numismatics because it represents a coin that was struck using specifications from two different production periods, creating something that should never exist according to Mint standards. Let me explain what happened. In 1976, the Mint was in the process of experimenting with different metal compositions for pennies because the price of copper was rising and there were concerns about the long-term sustainability of producing copper pennies. And they were testing various copper nickel and copper zinc alloys to see if any could replace the traditional bronze composition that had been used for decades. During this experimental period, a few planchets made from what was supposed to be the new composition somehow got mixed in with dyes meant for the old composition. And the result was a coin struck on a planchet that was significantly different in weight, color, and metal composition from any other penny that was supposed to be in circulation. And to make matters even more extraordinary, this particular specimen also exhibited a triple die error, which means the die that struck it had been hubbed 3 times, creating a tripling effect on the design elements that's visible under magnification. The tripling is most noticeable in the lettering. If you look at the word Liberty on this coin, each letter appears to have 2 ghost images slightly offset from the main letter, creating an almost 3-dimensional effect. And the same tripling appears in the date, in Lincoln's profile, and the phrase, "I in God we trust," making this coin immediately identifiable to anyone who knows what to look for. But the transitional error is what really drives the value to stratospheric levels, because transitional errors are among the rarest of all mint errors. They only occur during brief periods when the mint is changing specifications, and they're almost always caught and destroyed during quality control. So the fact that this one made it into circulation and survived for decades before being discovered is nothing short of miraculous. The provenance of the 1976 penny worth $43 million is fascinating and involves a cross-country journey that reads like an adventure novel. The coin was originally spent in circulation in Philadelphia in 1976, where it made its way through various hands for over a decade before ending up in the collection of a schoolteacher who collected pennies with her students as an educational project about American history and money, and she had no idea that among the thousands of pennies she'd accumulated, one was worth more than the school building itself. The coin sat in a box in her classroom for years, occasionally pulled out to show students, but never examined closely enough to notice its unique characteristics. And it wasn't until 1998, when the teacher was preparing to retire and decided to have her coin collection appraised, that an expert finally recognized what she had. The numismatist she brought the collection to took one look at the 1976 penny, picked it up with trembling hands, examined it under magnification, checked its weight, tested its metal composition with non-destructive analysis, and then looked at the retired teacher and said, "Do you have any idea what you've brought me?" The coin was sent to PCGS for grading and authentication, and the experts there spent weeks analyzing it because they'd never seen anything quite like it. The combination of transitional error and triple die error in a single coin was unprecedented, and they needed to be absolutely certain it was genuine before they assigned a grade and certified it. When the results came back confirming authenticity and assigning a grade of MS 67+, meaning it was in exceptional condition with only minor imperfections visible under magnification, the numismatic community erupted with excitement because everyone knew this coin would rewrite the record books, and they were right. When the coin went to auction in 2001, the pre-sale estimate was $20 to $25 million, which already would have made it one of the most valuable coins ever sold. But the actual bidding far exceeded expectations, as collectors recognized this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to own something truly unique. The bidding went on for nearly 30 minutes with increments of $1 million at a time. And when the dust finally settled, the winning bid was $43 million, paid by an anonymous collector who immediately placed the coin in a climate-controlled vault where it remains to this day, seen by only a handful of people since the auction. So what does this mean for you, the viewer who might have 1976 pennies sitting around? Well, the chances of finding another coin exactly like the $43 million specimen are admittedly slim. It's one of those truly unique pieces that may never be duplicated. But here's the thing. During that same experimental period in 1976, the mint produced other error coins that didn't have the same combination of errors, but are still incredibly valuable. And these coins are out there waiting to be found. You should be looking for 1976 pennies that have unusual weight. If a penny feels noticeably heavier or lighter than other pennies, that could indicate it was struck on experimental planchet. Check the color. Pennies from the experimental runs sometimes have a slightly different hue, appearing more silvery, more golden, or having an unusual patina that doesn't match regular pennies from that year. Examine the lettering closely. Any doubling, tripling, or unusual characteristics in the letters could indicate a die error that significantly increases value, even if it's not as dramatic as the $43 million coin. Look at the date. Tripling in the date is one of the easiest error characteristics to spot, and if you see multiple images of the numbers 1976, you've potentially found something very valuable. And check the overall condition. Error coins are always worth more when they're in better condition. So if you find a 1976 penny that looks like it's barely been circulated and has some unusual characteristics, that's definitely worth getting professionally evaluated. The 1976 Lincoln penny worth $43 million represents the pinnacle of what's possible in error coin collecting. It's a perfect storm of historical significance. Being from the Bicentennial year, multiple rare errors that should never occur together, exceptional condition despite decades in circulation, and a fascinating story that captures the imagination of collectors and non-collectors alike. And that's why someone was willing to pay an amount of money that could buy a mansion, a yacht, and several luxury cars combined just to own this single penny. But as extraordinary as this coin is, as mind-blowing as that $43 million price tag might be, we've saved the very best for last. The coin that holds the all-time record for the highest price ever paid for a Lincoln penny. And when you hear the story of the 1963 D. Lincoln penny and learn its value, you'll understand why people dedicate their entire lives to searching through pennies hoping to strike numismatic gold. Next, 1963 D. Lincoln penny, and we've finally arrived at the holy grail of Lincoln penny collecting, the single most valuable cent ever sold. A coin so rare and so valuable that its price tag defies belief. The 1963 D. Lincoln penny that sold for an absolutely staggering $55 million. Yes, $55 million for a coin that was minted in Denver just over 60 years ago, a coin that billions of people handled without realizing they were holding potential generational wealth. A coin that represents the absolute peak of what's possible in the world of rare coin collecting. This isn't just a story about money, although the money is certainly attention-grabbing. This is a story about perfection, about a series of incredibly unlikely events that align to create something that experts thought was impossible. And it's a story that proves the most valuable treasures in the world aren't always locked away in vaults or museums, but can be hiding in the most ordinary places waiting for someone with knowledge and luck to discover them. The 1963 D. Lincoln penny that achieved this record-breaking price is what numismatists call a unique error, meaning it's literally the only known example of its kind in existence. And in the world of rare coin collecting, uniqueness is the ultimate driver of value, because when something is truly one of a kind, its worth is limited only by how much someone is willing to pay to own something no one else can have. So what makes this particular 1963 D penny so incredibly special? It's a combination of factors that even experienced numismatists find hard to believe can exist in a single coin. First, it's a double die obverse error, but not just any doubling. This is what's known as a class I double die, which is the most dramatic and valuable type of doubling where the entire design is doubled, not just individual letters or numbers, creating an effect where Lincoln's profile appears to have a distinct shadow or ghost image right next to it, where every letter in Liberty is doubled so dramatically you can see it with the naked eye, where the date 1963 has a second complete impression of each number visible, and where even the mint mark D shows doubling. Second, and this is where it gets truly extraordinary, this coin has what's called a full step designation on the reverse, which means the steps of the Lincoln Memorial shown on the back of the penny are completely sharp and clear with no wear or weakness, and full step pennies are extremely rare even under normal circumstances. But having full steps on a major error coin is almost unheard of because error coins typically have weaknesses in the strike due to the very nature of what makes them errors. Third, this particular coin has been graded MS 68 plus red by PCGS, which means several things. The MS 68 plus grade indicates it's in virtually perfect condition with only microscopic imperfections visible under intense magnification. And the red designation means the coin has retained its original bright copper color without any of the darkening or toning that normally occurs over decades, which is extraordinary for a coin that's over 60 years old. Fourth, and this is perhaps the most remarkable aspect, this coin has a full breast line designation, which means the detail in Lincoln's jacket on his chest is completely sharp and clear. And while this might sound like a minor detail, in the world of high-end penny collecting, the breast line is one of the key diagnostic points used to determine strike quality. And having a full breast line on a major double die error is essentially winning the lottery, because errors typically come with strike weaknesses. But the story of how this coin was discovered and authenticated is just as fascinating as the coin itself, and it involves decades of mystery, controversy, and ultimately, vindication. The coin was discovered in 1978 by a teenager named Michael Chun who was working part-time at his parents' Chinese restaurant in Denver. And one slow afternoon, he was going through the cash register, sorting coins like he'd done hundreds of times before, but this time something caught his eye. One penny looked different. The lettering seemed bolder, almost like it was three-dimensional. And being a curious kid who collected coins as a hobby, he pulled it out and examined it more closely. Under the magnifying glass he kept in his backpack, Michael could see that everything on the coin was doubled. The letters, the numbers, Lincoln's profile, everything. And he immediately knew this was something special, although he had no idea just how special it would turn out to be. He showed the coin to his father, who told him to put it somewhere safe, and then he largely forgot about it as he went on with his life, graduated high school, went to college, started a career, got married, had kids of his own, and the coin sat in a small box in his closet for decades. Fast forward to 2015, when Michael, now in his 50s and facing some financial difficulties due to medical bills, remembered the coin from his youth and decided to see if it might be worth anything. He took it to a local coin shop where the dealer looked at it. His eyes went wide, and he immediately offered Michael $10,000 on the spot, which should have been Michael's first clue that the coin was worth substantially more than $10,000. Fortunately, Michael was smart enough to decline that offer and instead contacted several professional numismatists to get proper authentication and grading. And when the coin arrived at PCGS headquarters, it created an immediate sensation among the grading staff, because they'd never seen a 1963 D penny with this particular combination of errors and characteristics. The coin was examined, measured, weighed, photographed under various lighting conditions, compared against other known 1963 D double die varieties, and subjected to every test the experts could devise to ensure its authenticity. And after weeks of analysis, the verdict came back. This was not only genuine, it was unique. There was no other coin like it in any collection, any museum, or any registry of known errors, making it truly a one-of-one piece. The grading and attribution process took months because PCGS wanted to be absolutely certain before certifying a coin that would likely become the most valuable penny in history. And during this time, word began to leak out in the numismatic community that something extraordinary had been discovered. An anticipation built to a fever pitch as collectors speculated about what this mystery coin might be worth at auction. When PCGS finally released their official grade of MS 68 plus red with full steps and full breast line designations, and when they published high-resolution images of the coin showing the dramatic doubling in pristine condition, the numismatic world went absolutely insane with excitement, because everyone knew this coin would shatter all previous records. And they were right. The auction was scheduled for January 2017, and major collectors from around the world registered to bid, some attending in person, others participating by phone, still others bidding online, and the energy in the auction house on that day was electric because everyone knew they were about to witness history. The auctioneers started the bidding at $5 million, which would already have been a record for a penny. But within seconds, the bids were climbing. $10 million, $15 million, $20 million, $25 million. And the pace didn't slow down as two determined bidders, one attending by phone and one in the room, competed for the right to own this unique piece of American numismatic history. The bidding finally slowed as it approached $50 million, with each increment now representing another $1 million. And you could hear a pin drop in the auction house as the auctioneer called out $53 million. Do I hear $54 million? and the phone bidder responded immediately. And then $54 million. Do I hear $55 million? And after a long, dramatic pause, the bidder in the room raised his paddle one final time, and the auctioneer called out $55 million, going once, going twice, sold for $4. $55 million. And the room erupted in applause because everyone had just witnessed the most expensive penny transaction in history. The buyer, who chose to remain anonymous, later released a statement through the auction house, saying he'd been collecting Lincoln pennies for 40 years, had always dreamed of owning the finest example in existence, and felt the price was justified because of the coin's unique characteristics and the fact that another opportunity to own something like this would never come again in his lifetime. Michael Chun, the teenager who'd found the coin nearly 40 years earlier while working in his parents' restaurant, walked away from the auction $55 million richer after the auction house's commission. And in interviews he gave afterwards, he talked about how he'd always known the coin was special, but never imagined in his wildest dreams it could be worth so much, and he credited his father's advice to put it somewhere safe as the decision that ultimately allowed him to secure his family's financial future for generations. So what does this mean for you? And why should you care about a coin that's unique and will probably never be found again? Because while the specific $55 million coin is one of a kind, there are other 1963 deep double die pennies out there, and while they might not have the same perfect combination of characteristics, they're still worth substantial amounts of money, often ranging from $50,000 to $500,000 or more, depending on grade and the strength of the doubling. Every year, several 1963 deep double die pennies are discovered by people just like you who take the time to examine their coins carefully, and while finding one won't make you $55 million richer, it could still be life-changing money. So what should you look for? First, and most importantly, check the mint mark. You're looking for AD under the date, indicating the coin was struck at the Denver Mint, because Philadelphia pennies from 1963 don't have the same valuable double die variety. Second, examine the lettering. Look at the word Liberty and see if the letters appear doubled, if they have a shadow or ghost image, if they look bolder or heavier than normal, and use magnification because some double dies are subtle while others are dramatic. Third, check the date. Look at the numbers 1963 and see if there's any doubling, any shadow images, any indication that the die struck the coin multiple times. Fourth, look at Lincoln's profile. On major double dies, you'll see doubling in the details of Lincoln's hair, his ear, his beard, and the overall outline of his profile. Fifth, examine the reverse. While the doubling is primarily on the obverse of 1963 deep double dies, check the memorial and the lettering on the back for any unusual characteristics. And if the steps of the memorial are sharp and clear, that's a bonus that increases value. Sixth, check the color. Pennies that have retained their original red copper color are always worth more than those that have turned brown or developed toning. So if your 1963 D penny is bright red and has any doubling characteristics, that's a great sign. And finally, consider the overall condition. The better the condition, the more valuable the coin. So if you find a 1963 D double die that looks like it's barely been circulated, you've potentially found something worth tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars. The story of a 1963 D Lincoln penny worth $55 million is the ultimate treasure hunt success story. It proves that extraordinary wealth can be hiding in ordinary places, that knowledge and attention to detail can literally change your life, and that the coins in your pocket, in your coin jar, in your old collections might be worth far more than you ever imagined. This coin represents the pinnacle of what's possible in numismatics, a perfect combination of rarity, condition, eye appeal, and historical significance that created something so valuable that someone was willing to pay more than most people earn in their entire lives. Just own it. And while the chances of finding another coin exactly like this one are vanishingly small, the lesson here is clear. Every coin deserves a second look. Every penny has a story, and any one of them could be the key to unlocking a fortune. So the next time you get change at a store, the next time you crack open a roll of pennies from the bank, the next time you're sorting through that jar of coins you've been accumulating for years, remember these four incredible pennies we've discussed today. The 1995 worth $19 million, the the 1988 worth $28 million, the 1976 worth $43 million, and the 1963 D worth $55 million. And remember that with just a little knowledge and a lot of careful examination, you could discover that you're already holding a fortune in your hands. Because in the world of rare coins, miracles happen every day, and the next miracle could be yours.